Tom sat at the grand dining table, hands trembling, heart pounding. His eyes met his father's, full of determination. "Dad, I don't want to live here anymore. I want to live with Christine," he said, voice shaking but resolute. The room froze. Silence stretched like a heavy curtain. Carl's jaw tightened. "Tom, no," he said firmly, trying to mask his shock. But Tom didn't back down. His chest rose and fell rapidly, tears threatening. "Please, Dad. Christine's home feels more like home than this mansion ever did," he whispered, voice raw with longing. The air crackled with tension. Christine's heart ached as she watched. No one expected a 13-year-old boy to make such a bold request. What would Carl do? Would he let his son leave the comfort of wealth for the warmth of love? Could a simple maid's home teach a rich boy the meaning of family? Before we dive into Tom's journey and discover how this shocking choice changes everything, take a moment to follow the channel and join us for more stories that touch the heart, inspire courage, and reveal the power of love. Tom Winter had everything a boy could dream of, or at least, that's what the world thought. From the outside, his life seemed like a fairy tale. Golden chandeliers hanging above marble floors, halls wide enough to echo every step, and a bedroom so large it could swallow silence whole. But at just 13, Tom already knew a painful truth. Riches could buy comfort, but they could not buy love. The Winter Mansion was a kingdom without warmth, a palace without laughter. Every corner gleamed with wealth, yet felt hollow. Tom often compared it to a cage made of gold, beautiful, shining, impressive to those who looked at it from afar, but suffocating for the boy who lived inside. His chest tightened whenever he thought about it. Nights were the worst. Lying in his giant bed, surrounded by expensive sheets that smelled of lavender and starch, he would stare at the ceiling and feel his throat ache with the weight of loneliness. His father, Carl Winter, was a man of steel, powerful, respected, a CEO whose name inspired both admiration and fear in the business world. But at home, his presence was like a rare storm in a desert. Always busy, always chasing another deal, another number, another victory. Carl loved his son in his own way, but love was never shown through words, never through hugs, never through time spent together. For Tom, it felt like affection was a luxury he simply wasn't worthy of. And so, the only warmth in his gilded prison came from Christine Miller, the loyal maid who had worked in the mansion for years. Christine was not just an employee, she was a ray of light in a house that had long forgotten how to glow. With her gentle smile and patient heart, she filled the silence with tenderness. She treated Tom not like a burden, not like the heir to an empire, but like a boy fragile, human, in need of care. "You're safe with me, sweetheart," Christine would whisper whenever she tucked him in at night. And for a fleeting moment, Tom would believe it. Those words were a balm on the wounds he didn't even know how to name. Still, the emptiness always came back. The sound of the wind against the tall windows seemed to mock him. His heart longed for something simple, laughter echoing in the hallways, a hand to hold without hesitation, hugs that weren't staged for appearances. What he craved most was the kind of love he saw in Christine's eyes whenever she spoke about her own children, Ethan and Caleb. Tom's eyes would glisten whenever Christine described them. "Ethan's the thinker," she would say with pride, her eyes sparkling. "He loves books, just like I did when I was young. And Caleb? Oh, that boy could turn the gloomiest day into sunshine. Always laughing, always running." When she spoke about her boys, Christine's face softened in a way Tom had never seen on his father's. That glow of maternal love pierced his chest with both hope and sorrow. Hope because it showed him what love could look like. Sorrow because he feared he would never truly have it for himself. He sometimes closed his eyes and imagined being part of their world, sitting at a small kitchen table, passing bread around, laughing at silly jokes. In his imagination, the food didn't have to be served on silver plates, and the chairs didn't have to be carved from oak. All that mattered was the feeling, the warmth that filled the air when people truly cared for one another. But then reality would snap him back, the cold marble floors under his feet, the ticking of the grand clock in the hallway, the faint smell of perfume that lingered after his father rushed out for another meeting. One evening, after a particularly lonely dinner where Carl sat glued to his phone and left before dessert, Tom whispered to Christine, his voice trembling with a knot in his throat. "Why doesn't he ever look at me like you look at your boys?" Christine's heart clenched. She sat beside him, brushing a lock of brown hair from his forehead. "Oh, Tommy," she murmured, her chest aching. "Your father loves you in his way. He doesn't know how to show it." Tears burned behind Tom's eyes. He wanted to believe her, but deep inside, he felt invisible. "Sometimes I think if I disappeared, he wouldn't even notice," he confessed, his voice breaking. His small hands trembled on the table as he fought to keep his tears from spilling. Christine took his hand and squeezed it gently. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears of her own. "Never say that again. You matter. You matter more than you'll ever know. Don't let this house convince you otherwise. Money builds walls, but love breaks them down. And I promise you, Tommy, I'll never let you face this world alone." Her words wrapped around him like a shield. For the first time that day, Tom's chest loosened, and he allowed himself to breathe. He leaned into her touch, wishing the moment could last forever. But when the night came and Christine turned off the lights, the shadows returned. Alone in his vast room, Tom pressed his face into his pillow. His heart pounded painfully, his stomach churned, and the silence felt heavier than stone. No matter how many treasures surrounded him, he felt like the poorest boy in the world. In the stillness, he whispered into the darkness, almost as if praying. "One day, I just want to know what it feels like to really belong." And with that, the boy who lived in a golden cage drifted into a restless sleep, his dreams carrying him somewhere far away, somewhere warmer, somewhere real. The mansion had always been silent, but that evening, the silence broke in a way Tom would never forget. The heavy oak doors opened, and his father, Carl Winter, walked in with a presence that seemed even larger than usual. His eyes gleamed with something Tom rarely saw, excitement. But it wasn't excitement for him. No. Standing beside Carl was a woman who seemed to change the very air around her. Her name was Penelope Hart. The moment she stepped inside, it was as if the walls themselves bent to her will. She was tall, elegant, wrapped in a dress that shimmered like liquid night. Her perfume floated through the hallways, sharp and sweet, a scent that made Tom's stomach twist. Her smile looked polished, almost perfect, yet there was something about it that felt rehearsed, as if she had practiced in front of a mirror until every curve of her lips was calculated. "This is Penelope," Carl announced proudly, his voice deep and steady. "She is my future." Tom's chest tightened. Future? The word struck him like a punch. He glanced at Christine, who stood quietly in the corner, her hands clasped, her eyes wary. She didn't smile. She didn't clap. Instead, her lips pressed into a thin line, and her chest rose with a quiet, restrained breath. Penelope leaned down, her diamond earrings catching the light. She extended a perfectly manicured hand toward Tom, her eyes narrowing just slightly. "And you must be Tom," she said sweetly, her voice like honey laced with glass. Tom's throat dried up. He wanted to step back, to disappear, but his father was watching. Still, when her hand brushed his shoulder, his body reacted before his mind could stop it. He pulled away. His heart pounded wildly, his palms slick with sweat. Christine noticed. She saw the way Tom's body stiffened, the way fear flickered in his eyes. Her own chest tightened like a fist. Something in Penelope's gaze made her skin prickle, as though a shadow had crept into the room. That night, as Christine tucked Tom into bed, the boy's trembling voice broke the silence. I don't like her, he whispered, his eyes glassy with unshed tears. She doesn't feel right. Christine brushed a gentle hand through his hair, her throat aching. She wanted to protect him, to promise he'd never have to face anything that frightened him, but she couldn't lie to him either. Sometimes, she whispered softly, the heart sees what the eyes cannot. Trust that feeling, Tom. Tears rolled down his cheeks, hot against his skin. She looked at me like I was in her way. Christine's chest ached. She held his hand, her thumb brushing over his small knuckles. You're not in anyone's way. Don't ever believe that. But long after he closed his eyes, Christine sat awake, staring into the darkness. Something about Penelope gnawed at her instincts, and Christine had learned long ago. Instincts were rarely wrong. Downstairs, Penelope's act continued. She laughed softly at Carl's jokes, her hand lingering on his arm, her eyes wide with admiration. To anyone else, it might have looked like love. But when Carl left the room for a brief phone call, the mask slipped. Her eyes, once so warm, hardened like steel. Her lips twisted into a smirk that sent a chill crawling up the spine of the house itself. And though no one else was there to see it, the air seemed to grow colder, heavier, as though the mansion itself understood that something dangerous had stepped inside. The next morning, Tom avoided the dining room. The smell of roasted coffee and buttered croissants filled the air, but he couldn't bring himself to face her. Instead, he stayed in his room, hugging his pillow, his stomach knotted. Christine eventually found him there, his eyes red from crying. Tommy, she said softly, kneeling beside him, you don't have to hide. Not from me. His voice cracked, and he pressed his face into his knees. She makes me feel like I'm nothing. Like I don't belong in my own house. His chest heaved, every breath sharp and shaky. Christine's heart broke at his words. She wanted to storm into the dining room, to shout at Carl for being blind, to tell Penelope she would never let her hurt him. But instead, she pulled Tom close, his head resting against her shoulder. You belong, she whispered fiercely, her voice trembling with emotion. Don't let anyone make you believe otherwise. This house may be cold, but your heart is warmer than all the gold in these walls. Tom nodded, though tears streamed down his face. Meanwhile, Penelope smiled sweetly at Carl over breakfast, twirling her spoon through her coffee. He's shy, she said lightly, her tone dripping with false concern. I'll help him come out of his shell. Don't you worry. Carl chuckled, relieved by her words, unaware of the sharp edge hiding beneath them. But Tom knew better. Deep inside, his young heart screamed the truth. She doesn't belong here. And no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling that her arrival was only the beginning of something darker, something that would change everything. The days that followed were like walking on glass. At first, Penelope kept her mask polished, dazzling Carl with her laughter, her elegance, and her perfectly chosen words. To outsiders, she looked like a dream come true for the powerful CEO. But behind closed doors, her sweetness began to sour slowly, subtly, like a poison you don't notice until it's already running through your veins. Tom felt it first. He always did. When Carl wasn't around, Penelope's gaze turned sharp, her smile brittle. At the dinner table, when Tom reached for dessert, her perfectly arched brow would rise, and she'd mutter under her breath, just loud enough for him to hear, spoiled already. You don't need more. Each comment was small, almost invisible to anyone else, but to Tom it felt like a blade pressed against his chest. His cheeks burned with humiliation, his hands curling into fists on the table. He bit his lips so hard it almost bled, fighting back tears. Christine noticed. She always noticed. One evening, she found him sitting alone in the garden, his small shoulders shaking as he tried to hold back sobs. Tommy, she whispered, kneeling beside him, her heart aching at the sight of his red eyes. "She hates me," he choked out, his voice breaking. "I can feel it. And Dad doesn't even see it." Christine's throat tightened. She gathered him in her arms, his tears soaking into her uniform. "Don't let her steal your light, Tom," she murmured, stroking his hair gently. "You are kind. You are strong. And no one can take that away from you." But the boy's chest heaved with grief. Why does Dad believe her and not me? Christine closed her eyes, her own tears threatening to fall. She had no answer, only the desperate hope that one day Carl would finally open his eyes. As weeks passed, Penelope's cruelty sharpened. When she and Tom were alone, her words were daggers dressed in silk. "You think you're special because you live in this mansion? You're just a weak little boy who's never faced the real world." Tom's stomach clenched, nausea rising as shame washed over him. His heart hammered so fast it felt like it might break free from his chest. One night, it all came crashing down. They were in the living room, the fire casting long shadows across the walls. Carl sat in his leather chair, flipping through reports, while Penelope perched gracefully beside him. Tom had gathered the courage to speak, his hands trembling, his throat dry. "Dad," his voice cracked, but he pushed through. "I don't want her here." The words hung heavy in the air, sharp and raw. Carl froze, his eyes darting from his son to Penelope. Penelope's lips curled into a sneer, her eyes cold and glinting like broken glass. "He's being dramatic," she said smoothly, her voice like velvet wrapped around thorns. "Christine coddles him too much. No wonder he's weak." Tom's face burned as tears spilled over his cheeks. "I'm not weak," he cried, his fists clenched so tightly his nails dug into his palms. I just want you to see me, Dad." Carl's chest tightened, torn between the boy's desperate plea and the woman whose beauty had blinded him. His pulse quickened as confusion clouded his mind. Christine stepped forward, her voice trembling but steady. "Carl, he's hurting. Can't you see? Look at him." But Carl only pressed a hand to his forehead, his jaw tight. He didn't know what to believe. And in that moment of hesitation, something inside Tom broke. The bond between father and son, once fragile but unbroken, cracked like glass under pressure. Tom's heart pounded painfully, his chest aching with betrayal. He felt unseen, unheard, as though his voice had been swallowed by the mansion's golden walls. That night, alone in his room, Tom sat on the edge of his bed, his whole body trembling. He pressed his hands over his face, hot tears streaming between his fingers. His throat ached, his breathing ragged. "I'm nothing to him," he whispered to the dark. "I don't matter." But beneath the grief, another feeling began to stir. It was faint at first, like a flicker in the shadows, but it grew stronger with each beat of his aching heart. It was defiance. If his father wouldn't fight for him, if Penelope wanted to crush his spirit, then Tom would have to find his own strength. The thought both scared and fueled him. For the first time in his young life, he felt a spark of rebellion ignite within his chest. Christine, sitting awake in her own small room down the hall, wiped her tears and whispered into the darkness, "Hold on, sweetheart. Don't let her win." But deep inside, both Christine and Tom knew something had changed forever. And once a bond breaks, nothing is ever the same again. Dinner at the Winter Mansion had always been quiet, but that night the silence was heavy, suffocating, like storm clouds waiting to burst. The golden chandelier above the table cast a warm glow, but Tom felt nothing warm about it. He sat at the long table across from his father, Carl, and Penelope, the woman who now haunted every corner of his life. Christine moved quietly in the background, serving the dishes, her eyes flicking toward Tom, sensing the tension brewing inside him. Tom stared at his plate, his fork scraping against the porcelain. His chest felt tight, his stomach twisted in knots. Each breath was shallow, shaky. The weight of weeks of humiliation and loneliness pressed down on him until he could no longer keep it in. His hand trembled, and then blink. He slammed his fork onto the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the vast dining room. I don't want to live here anymore. His voice cracked, raw and desperate. His face flushed red, his eyes burning with tears that refused to be held back. I want to stay with Christine. The words hit Carl like a slap. His jaw tightened, his brow furrowed in shock. Tom, this is your home, he said firmly, his deep voice carrying both authority and disbelief. Tom's whole body shook as he rose from his chair. His fists balled at his sides, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break his ribs. No, Dad. His voice wavered, but the fire in his chest pushed it forward. Christine's house feels more like home than this mansion ever did. When I'm with her, I feel safe. I feel alive. Here, I feel like I'm trapped. Like I'm invisible. His confession hung in the air like a fragile truth, ready to shatter. Carl blinked, torn between anger and confusion. His pulse quickened as he glanced at Christine, who stood frozen, her hands pressed against the serving tray. Tears welled in her eyes at Tom's words, her heart splitting at the boy's pain. And then slowly, a sly smile spread across Penelope's lips. She leaned closer to Carl, her perfume wrapping around him like smoke. Her voice was low, silky, dripping with poison disguised as reason. Let him go, she whispered, her hand brushing Carl's arm. He's spoiled. Living in her little house will break his pride. Give it a week, he'll come back begging to be here. Sometimes the rich need to taste poverty to understand how good they have it. Tom's stomach dropped as he saw Penelope's expression. His pulse thundered in his ears. She wasn't letting him go out of kindness. This was a game. Carl hesitated. His chest rose and fell heavily, his thoughts warring inside him. A father's instinct to protect clashed with the temptation to test his son's words. His throat felt dry, his palms sweaty under the table. Finally, after a long silence that made Tom's heart nearly stop, Carl nodded. Fine, he said slowly, his voice heavy. You can stay with Christine. But under one condition, during the day, while she works here, you will be in this house. At night, you leave with her. Understood. Tom gasped, his heart racing. Hope sparked in his chest like the first crack of light through prison bars. It wasn't full freedom, but it was something. He nodded quickly, tears spilling down his cheeks, his body trembling with relief. Christine swallowed hard, her chest aching as though a hand was squeezing her heart. She knew exactly what Penelope was doing. This wasn't kindness. It was a trap. Penelope expected Tom to break, to run back into the golden cage with his spirit shattered. But Christine also knew something else. Tom needed this chance. He needed to feel the difference between a house and a home, between riches and love. Thank you, Dad, Tom whispered, his voice small but steady, his eyes shining with a mix of fear and courage. Carl only nodded, his face unreadable, though deep inside his stomach twisted. For the first time, he had agreed to something he didn't fully understand, and it unsettled him. Christine stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. I'll take care of him, she said softly. Carl's eyes flicked to hers, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them, a mixture of trust, guilt, and fear. Penelope smirked into her glass of wine, her eyes glinting with cold satisfaction. In her mind, she had already won. The boy would crawl back, broken and humbled, and she would stand as the woman who had proven him weak. But as Tom sat back down, his chest rising and falling with shaky breaths, something inside him had shifted. For the first time in his life, he had spoken up. For the first time, he had demanded to be heard. His voice had cracked, his hands had trembled, but he had stood for his own heart. And in that trembling defiance, the seed of transformation had been planted. Tom Winters stepped across the threshold of Christine's modest house and felt the world shift beneath him. The mansion, with its endless corridors, its golden chandeliers and marble floors, suddenly seemed distant and hollow. Here the air was warm, alive with the sounds of laughter and conversation, filled with smells of home-cooked meals that weren't fancy or expensive, but comforting. Every corner radiated life, not wealth. His chest tightened, but this time it wasn't fear or sadness. It was anticipation, a nervous flutter like butterflies in the stomach. His small hands brushed against the worn wooden banister as he walked in, noticing the subtle imperfections. A chipped corner on the table, a small scratch in the floorboards. For the first time, imperfection didn't feel wrong. It felt real. It felt like home. Ethan and Caleb, Christine's sons, ran toward him as if they had known him all their lives. Caleb's laughter rang out, high-pitched and carefree, and Ethan's grin was wide and genuine. "Come on, Tom. Race you to the backyard," Caleb shouted, grabbing his sleeve. Tom hesitated for only a moment before being pulled into the game. His lungs filled with the crisp air as he ran across the uneven grass, the warmth of the sun brushing his face. For the first time, he wasn't the lonely rich boy trapped in a gilded cage. He was just a kid, running, laughing free. His heart hammered, and his chest lifted with exhilaration, a smile breaking across his face that hadn't appeared in weeks. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Christine called them in. The aroma of a homemade casserole filled the kitchen, and the three boys gathered around a table. Tom hesitated at first, then picked up a fork and took a bite. The food was simple, no chef's delicate touches, no gold-rimmed plates, but every bite seemed infused with love. His chest swelled as he realized he was not only hungry for food, but for this sense of belonging. "This is amazing," he said softly, cheeks flushed. Christine smiled, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "It's not the food that makes it amazing, Tom. It's the people sharing it with you." His eyes glimmered as he looked at Ethan and Caleb. The boys grinned back, their faces bright, untainted by the constraints of wealth and status. Tom felt a warmth spread through him, a knot in his throat loosening, his hands resting lightly on the table instead of clenching into fists. Yet the transition was not without its challenges. Every morning, he had to return to the mansion. Walking through its silent, polished halls made him shiver. Penelope's presence lingered like a shadow, her smirk sharp and calculating every time he passed her in the corridor. His stomach churned, his heart thudding painfully. Christine's gentle reassurance anchored him. "Just a few hours, Tommy," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Then you're back where you belong." And when evening came, he returned to the small house, each step lighter than the last, as though shedding layers of worry and fear. Here he could breathe. Here he could laugh without restraint. As the days turned into weeks, a pattern emerged. Tom grew stronger, more confident, and more attuned to the rhythm of this new life. He learned how to help Ethan with homework, how to build makeshift forts in the living room, how to cook simple meals with Christine's guidance. Each task brought a sense of pride, of accomplishment. Each evening, as he lay in bed at Christine's home, the warmth in his chest grew, overshadowing the loneliness that had once defined him. Christine watched him with quiet pride, though her heart ached for the struggle he endured during the day at the mansion. She knew the boy's resilience was being forged in this contrast between two worlds. One night, as they all sat together, Christine leaned down, her eyes warm. "Tommy," she whispered, "life isn't about where you sleep or what you own. It's about the love you give and the love you let in. Remember that." Tom nodded, feeling a lump rise in his throat. I think I understand now. The laughter, the warmth, the care. It was all a revelation. For the first time, Tom knew that home wasn't a mansion with gold and luxury. It was a place where hearts connected, where he felt safe, valued, and loved. Even back at the mansion, the contrast shaped him. He noticed the emptiness, the cold smiles, and the pretense. Each return to Christine's house after a day at the mansion was like stepping into sunlight after a storm. His spirit grew, his laughter more genuine, his chest lighter. And in that modest home, amid the chaos of real life, Tom began to heal. He discovered that love, not wealth, built the strongest walls, the kind that could shelter a heart even against the coldest storms. As the night deepened and the house grew quiet, Tom lay in bed, chest rising and falling steadily, a small smile touching his lips. For the first time in his life, he felt what it truly meant to belong. And in his dreams, for the first time, he didn't feel trapped. He felt free. The mansion seemed colder than ever that morning, as if it knew something had shifted. Tom's steps echoed against the marble floors, each sound sharp, unnerving. The grandeur of the winter estate, the towering ceilings, glittering chandeliers, and polished surfaces, felt oppressive now. It was beautiful, but lifeless, like a stage set waiting for actors to breathe meaning into it. And in that space, Penelope moved with a calculated elegance that made the air itself tremble. "Carl," she purred, her voice honeyed yet sharp, like a knife wrapped in velvet. She draped herself across the edge of the leather sofa, diamonds catching the light as if to warn him of their sharpness. "You work too hard. You shouldn't have to manage everything alone. Let me handle more, including the company." Carl chuckled nervously, his eyes darting around, a knot twisting in his stomach. Something about her suggestion didn't feel right, but the mask she wore was flawless. She leaned closer, lips brushing near his ear, and for a moment, Carl felt comforted, almost dazzled. Yet behind that sparkling facade, a darkness lurked. Employees whispered in hushed tones when they thought no one was listening. "She's after control, not love." The murmurs were like echoes bouncing through the halls, small but persistent, leaving a sticky unease in their wake. Tom sensed it too, though he didn't yet have words to name it. Forced to spend his days under Penelope's cold, scrutinizing gaze, Tom's chest tightened constantly, his palms slick with nervous sweat. Every interaction with her felt like walking a tightrope. Her smile was warm in the right moments, yet her eyes always calculated, always cold beneath the surface. Every word she spoke seemed to test him, to gauge his fear, his obedience. During one lunch, she leaned toward him, her breath scented with expensive perfume, and said casually, "You should learn to obey properly, Tom. Being spoiled will get you nowhere in life." The words hit him like a punch. His chest constricted, his throat closed, and his stomach churned violently. He forced himself to swallow, to nod, pretending to listen, but the hot sting of humiliation burned his cheeks. He wanted to scream, to run, to escape. But escape meant confronting something he wasn't ready for. The cruel reality that Penelope's power over him was more than just manipulation. It was a test of his spirit. When the day finally ended, Christine's home became his sanctuary. The moment he stepped through the modest door, a wave of relief washed over him, almost knocking the breath from his lungs. Here, there were no sharp eyes, no biting words, no pretense. He could laugh freely with Ethan and Caleb, chase them through the small backyard, feel the wind whip against his face, and let his chest rise and fall with genuine, unburdened laughter. "Come on, Tom." "Faster," Caleb shouted, tugging at his sleeve, and Tom's stomach flipped with joy as he sprinted, his heartbeat hammering in his chest like a drum of victory. Evenings became a ritual of healing. They cooked simple meals together, shared stories at the dinner table, and sometimes just sat in comfortable silence. The warmth of the home penetrated him slowly, reshaping the hollow spaces the mansion had left. His shoulders relaxed, his breathing became steady, and for the first time in weeks, he didn't flinch at the sound of footsteps outside his room. Christine watched him closely, her heart swelling with pride yet aching for the battles he endured during the day. She understood that resilience was being forged here, in the tension between two worlds, the opulence of the mansion and the simple, vibrant love of their home. One night, as the boys played a quiet game of cards on the worn rug, Tom paused and looked at Christine, his eyes bright and serious. "Do you think Dad will ever see what's happening at the mansion? That she's not really good for him?" Christine sighed softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her fingers were warm, grounding him. "Tommy, sometimes adults are blinded by what they want to see. But don't let that dim your heart. You have to hold on to what's real, what you know is love." Her words settled into him like seeds in fertile soil. He realized, amid the laughter and the warmth of her home, that true strength wasn't just about survival. It was about courage, about holding on to hope when surrounded by pretense. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Penelope's carefully constructed illusion began to crack. Small slips, unnoticed by Carl at first, showed her impatience and veiled malice. She rolled her eyes at employees, spoke sharply behind closed doors, and her sweetness curdled when confronted with anything outside her control. But Carl remained hesitant, caught in a web of charm, glamour, and denial. Tom, now living in two worlds, became more attuned to the contrasts. At the mansion, every smile felt fake, every word measured. At Christine's, every hug was warm, every glance sincere. He felt the weight of those contrasts in his chest, the tension of dual lives pressing on him. Yet each night, returning to Christine, he found strength. The mansion tried to break him, but home healed him. And in that cycle, oppression by day, liberation by night, Tom began to understand something profound. Resilience isn't built in comfort. It is forged in the spaces where fear meets love, where cruelty meets courage, and where the heart learns to distinguish truth from illusion. By the time he lay in bed, exhaustion tugging at his limbs, his chest rose steadily, not with anxiety, but with hope. Here, in Christine's modest home, laughter, warmth, and love had become his armor against the mansion's cold and against Penelope's sharp edge. Tom's heart pulsed steadily, a quiet rhythm of growing courage. And somewhere deep inside, he knew cracks in the mansion's illusion were only the beginning. Tom's life had become a delicate balancing act. Each day, he moved through the mansion like a ghost, avoiding Penelope's sharp glances, swallowing back words he longed to speak. Every step down the marbled hallways pressed heavily on his chest, a constant reminder of the dual world he navigated: luxury and oppression, love and fear. One evening, as the house settled into a tense quiet, Tom lingered near the kitchen, pretending to search for a snack. His ears perked, heart hammering, when he heard voices raised in hushed, venomous tones. "Stay out of my way," Penelope hissed, her voice sharp, cold as winter ice. "That boy isn't yours. He will learn to obey me or disappear. Do you hear me?" Christine froze, her hands gripping the counter, knuckles white. Her chest tightened, her throat burning. "Don't you dare talk about Tom like that," she said, voice quivering, yet firm with protective fury. Tom felt his stomach drop, a hollow emptiness spreading in his chest, then tightening so sharply he could hardly breathe. Sweat prickled his forehead, and his hands shook violently. His small body pressed against the doorway, trying to remain unseen, yet every nerve in him screamed to act. He fumbled for his phone with trembling fingers, nearly dropping it as he began recording. The venom in Penelope's voice, the cruelty in every syllable, reverberated in his ears like a hammer striking glass. His chest heaved with anger, his heart pounding so fast it felt like it might burst. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Christine's hands pressed against her mouth as if to hold back a sob. Tom could feel her trembling, her raw fear and rage pouring into the air like an electric current. In that moment, he realized the depth of the deception he had been surrounded by, and the danger Christine had quietly shielded him from all along. Later, with a knot in his throat and his stomach twisting, Tom confronted his father. Carl was in his study, leafing through reports, oblivious to the world crumbling around him. Tom's small hands gripped the edge of the desk, his knuckles whitening, and he lifted his phone. "Dad, you need to hear this," he said, voice shaking, eyes wide and urgent. The recording played. Penelope's words filled the room like an unmasking tide, each syllable stabbing at Carl's conscience. Carl froze, the report falling from his hands, papers fluttering to the floor like fallen leaves. His eyes widened, mouth opening slightly, but he shook his head in disbelief. "Tom, Penelope wouldn't." "Yes, Dad." Tom's voice cracked, a mix of fury, fear, and desperation. His chest tightened, tears spilling over, and he gripped the desk as if holding himself together. "She said it. She said all of it." Christine appeared in the doorway, silent yet commanding in her presence. Her chest heaved as she stepped closer, her eyes filled with tears yet unwavering. "Carl," she said softly, yet every word carried unshakable authority. "I've known it. I've seen it. And I've been protecting him from this, for his sake, not yours." Carl's face went pale, guilt etching deep lines into his features. His heart hammered painfully in his chest, a storm of regret and shock swirling inside him. He had been blind, seduced by charm and wealth, and now the truth crashed down around him with devastating force. Tom's hands trembled, his entire body shaking as he processed the enormity of what he had just uncovered. His chest ached, his stomach twisted, but there was also a spark of triumph, a fierce, fragile light that told him he had done the right thing. He had stood for truth, even when the world around him seemed against him. Christine placed a hand gently on his shoulder, grounding him. "You were brave, Tommy," she whispered. "Bravery isn't just in fighting, it's in standing for what's right, even when you're scared." Tom blinked, chest rising and falling rapidly, a shiver running down his spine. For the first time, he felt a small measure of relief mixed with fear. Relief that the truth was finally out, and fear for what Penelope might do next. Carl, now fully aware, sank into a chair, pressing his face into his hands. "Ah, I didn't see it," he murmured, voice breaking. "I was blind. I let her. I let all of this happen." Christine's eyes softened, though her jaw remained set. "You have a chance to make it right," she said. "It's not too late to protect him now." Tom's small hands found Christine's, gripping tightly. His eyes, glistening with tears, searched Carl's. "Please, just listen," he whispered. "See me. Hear me. Don't let her win." And in that moment, as the tension in the room hung thick, fragile, a new understanding began to form. The mask Penelope had worn so carefully had begun to crumble. Her control, though formidable, was not absolute. The bond of truth, love, and courage between Tom and Christine had proven stronger than the illusions of wealth and power. The night stretched long and heavy, but amidst the turmoil, a quiet resolve began to take root. Tom had seen the mask fall. He had recorded it. He had spoken the truth. And for the first time, he felt the stirrings of hope, fragile, yes, but undeniable. In the small heartbeat between fear and courage, the battle lines were drawn. The fight to protect what truly mattered, the heart, the family, the love, was only beginning. And this time, Tom would not be silenced. The grand ballroom of the Winter Mansion glittered under the sparkling chandeliers, a world of elegance and wealth. Guests in designer dresses and tailored suits mingled, glasses of champagne clinking in delicate hands. But amidst the opulence, a storm was brewing, a storm that would shatter illusions and reveal the hidden truths beneath the surface. Tom stood near the back, his small frame dwarfed by the towering adults around him. His chest thumped violently, a mix of anxiety and anticipation, and his stomach twisted as he scanned the room. Penelope moved through the crowd like a queen in her element, her smile radiant, her words honeyed and calculated. Yet to Tom, each gesture, each laugh, each glance felt wrong, cold and rehearsed, like a mask hiding venom beneath. Christine appeared beside him, her hand brushing against his shoulder. Her presence was grounding, a warm anchor amid the chaos. "Remember, Tommy," she whispered, voice steady, "you've seen the truth. You know who she really is. Stay strong." Tom swallowed hard, nodding. His palms were slick with sweat, his heart hammering so loudly he feared it might give him away. Every step Penelope took seemed deliberate, predatory. His chest tightened, breath shallow, eyes flicking from her to his father, whose face bore the faintest shadow of doubt, though he tried to maintain composure for the crowd. The moment arrived during a discussion with investors. Penelope's smile faltered as a question caught her off guard. Frustration twitched in her jaw. A sharpness entered her tone. "That boy is nothing but a burden," she snapped, her voice slicing through the chatter like glass shattering on marble. The room went silent. Champagne glasses paused midair. Conversations halted. Every eye turned toward her as the venom of her words landed on Tom like a heavy blow. His chest constricted painfully, a lump rising in his throat. Eyes stinging with tears, he tried to blink away. His heart raced, thumping like a drum, as humiliation and fear surged through him. Christine's reaction was immediate. She stepped forward, trembling yet resolute, her eyes blazing with protective fire. "Enough," she exclaimed, voice carrying over the stunned crowd. "You've heard him long enough." The room held its collective breath. Penelope's face twisted in fury, her calm facade cracking, revealing the sharp teeth beneath the smile. She sputtered, unable to regain control, as whispers and murmurs of shock spread among the guests. Carl's face paled, a wave of guilt and realization flooding him. His chest tightened, his stomach roiling as he processed the truth. He had been blind for too long, seduced by charm and elegance, ignoring the warning signs that had been there all along. The cruelty, the manipulation, the coldness, he had refused to see it until now. Tom's small hands clenched at his sides, trembling, tears rolling down his cheeks. His breath caught in his throat, but he stood taller, drawing strength from Christine's unwavering presence. She had been his shield, his guide, his anchor. And now the world could see what he had known all along. Christine's voice softened slightly, though it remained firm. "Love isn't measured by wealth, status, or appearances. It's measured by care, by protection, by the courage to stand for what's right. And that is what I have done for him." Carl stepped forward, his face pale, chest heaving, as he looked at both of them. His eyes, once clouded by pride and pretense, now held clarity. I was wrong," he admitted, voice cracking. "I didn't see what was happening. Christine, you've been protecting Tom all along, and I didn't notice. I didn't listen." Tom blinked, tears still glistening in his eyes, his chest still hammering with adrenaline, but a flicker of hope rose within him. For the first time, he felt the possibility of validation, of understanding, of justice. Penelope's fury escalated, but her audience had shifted. Investors and guests murmured among themselves, their eyes discerning, questioning. Her power, so long masked by charm, began to crumble. The control she wielded over perception faltered as the truth she had hidden so carefully emerged in plain sight. Tom's heart began to slow, his breathing evening out as the initial shock passed. A warmth spread in his chest, the warmth of courage, of resilience, of being seen. Christine's hand found his, squeezing gently, and he clung to it, letting the bond between them steady his trembling body. Carl, taking a deep breath, squared his shoulders. The weight of guilt, shame, and awareness pressed heavily upon him, but he also felt a surge of determination. This was the turning point, not just for Tom, not just for the family, but for the life they could rebuild together. The guests, sensing the gravity of the moment, began to murmur with curiosity, sympathy, and admiration. Some eyes softened, some heads nodded in acknowledgment, but all had witnessed the unraveling of a carefully constructed illusion. In that glittering ballroom, under the sparkling lights, the truth had emerged. The mask had fallen. The walls Penelope had built around herself and around Tom's life were crumbling. And in that collapse, a new strength began to rise, a strength rooted in honesty, courage, and the unwavering bonds of love. Tom's chest swelled with a cautious optimism. He had faced fear, humiliation, and manipulation, yet he stood firm. Christine's gaze met his, warm and proud, and in her eyes he saw what he had always needed: validation, love, and unwavering belief. That night, as the gala continued around them, Tom realized something profound. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act despite it. And sometimes, the most powerful turning points happen not in grand gestures, but in standing firmly for the truth when the world expects silence. The mansion had never felt so heavy, so empty. Penelope's furious screams echoed through the halls as she stormed out, slamming doors behind her. The sound vibrated against the walls, rattling the crystal chandeliers, but there was also a strange sense of relief in the air, a release from months of tension, fear, and manipulation. Carl sat in the grand living room, his hands gripping the edge of a polished table, knuckles white. His chest heaved with a mixture of guilt and exhaustion, heart hammering painfully. Sweat dotted his forehead as the full weight of what he had allowed to happen sank in. He had trusted charm over truth, appearances over substance, and nearly lost the one person who mattered most, his son. Christine stepped forward, cautious but steady. Her eyes were soft, filled with tears, yet unwavering in their intensity. "Carl," she said gently, voice quivering, "this is why I've protected him. I've always known. You were too blind to see, but he needed someone who could stand in that gap." Carl looked at her, his chest tightening, a knot forming in his stomach. His throat felt dry, and a lump rose as he tried to speak. I was wrong," he admitted, voice breaking. "I didn't see what was happening in front of me. Christine, you've been protecting Tom all along, and I failed him." Tom, small and fragile in his 13-year-old frame, stepped forward. His chest rose and fell with shallow, anxious breaths, heart still racing from the adrenaline of the confrontation. Tears shone in his eyes, a mixture of relief and lingering fear. He looked from his father to Christine, the two pillars of love and guidance in his life. "Dad," Tom's voice trembled, nodded with emotion. I just wanted you to see, to hear what was really happening. I didn't want to be alone in this." His hands shook, trembling as he wiped a tear from his cheek. The words poured out like a river that had been dammed too long. Christine's heart ached, and she stepped closer to Tom, placing a hand on his shoulder. Her touch was grounding, warm, and steady. "You were never alone, Tommy," she whispered. "Not really, and you never will be. But sometimes adults forget what's most important. You remind them." Carl's chest tightened further, his heartbeat erratic as he processed the depth of the situation. He felt a cold emptiness in his gut, a bitter taste of regret, and yet something in him stirred, a desire to make things right, to rebuild what had been nearly lost. He stood slowly, moving toward Christine, each step deliberate. His hands shook slightly, and his voice was soft, almost reverent. I see it now. The way you love him, the way you raise your sons, you show me what family really means. Christine." Christine swallowed hard, chest rising and falling rapidly, as if trying to steady the storm inside her. "I only did what any mother would do," she said quietly, yet every word carried strength and dignity. Tom's chest heaved with relief, the tightness easing slightly, and he finally allowed himself to take a deep breath. His small hands gripped Christine's, holding on to the warmth and reassurance that had become his lifeline. "See, Dad," he whispered softly. This, this is what home feels like." Carl reached out, hesitating briefly before taking Christine's hand in his own. His grip was gentle but firm, a silent promise to honor what she had done, to protect what truly mattered. His chest felt heavy with emotion, yet lighter than it had in months, as if a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying had finally lifted. The boys, Ethan and Caleb, watched quietly from nearby, their young faces wide with curiosity and understanding. They had witnessed the tension, the fear, and now the relief. They had seen love's strength, the courage it took to protect it, and the warmth that came from truth. Tom's eyes sparkled as he stepped closer to Carl. The knot in his throat loosened slightly, and his heart, though still pounding, felt steadier. "Dad, I know it's not easy, but thank you," he murmured, voice small but sincere. Carl's eyes glistened, chest tightening again, and he pulled Tom into a gentle, careful embrace. "I'm so sorry, son. I should have seen it sooner. I promise. I'll do better. I'll be better." Christine watched, a tear sliding down her cheek, chest aching with a complex mix of relief, exhaustion, and happiness. She had fought for this, protected this, and now the truth had finally prevailed. The heart of the family had been restored. In that quiet moment, the mansion, once cold and imposing, felt different. Not because the walls had changed, but because the hearts within them had awakened. The truth had broken through the pretense, and love had proven stronger than deception. Tom looked around the room at his father, at Christine, at the life that had been waiting for him beyond the gold and marble, and for the first time he felt a sense of belonging that was real, enduring, and unwavering. Carl's voice, soft yet filled with newfound understanding, filled the space. "We have a chance now to build something true, to be a family in the way that really matters." Tom's chest swelled, heart beating steadily now, not with fear but with hope. Christine's hand squeezed his, and he smiled, feeling the warmth of safety, love, and home. The mansion's walls may have been gilded, but it was the hearts within that had finally learned to beat in harmony, and in that truth, a new chapter of their lives quietly began. Weeks had passed since the confrontation that had shattered Penelope's hold over the Winter family. The mansion, once echoing with tension and cold pretense, now felt like a place in transition, a space where walls no longer masked the true heartbeat of the household. Yet it was Christine's modest home that had become the center of warmth, laughter, and the unshakable rhythm of family life. Tom moved through the small kitchen, his chest light, heart steady, and stomach fluttering with contentment. The aroma of a homemade breakfast filled the room, a simple yet profound reminder of love served daily in small gestures. Ethan and Caleb darted around, laughter spilling like sunlight through the windows. "Bet I can finish my cereal before you," Caleb shouted, scooping up a spoonful with glee. "Not a chance," Tom replied, giggling as he shoveled his own bites, heart fluttering with the joy of simple competition. The sound of genuine laughter, unforced and free, filled him with warmth he hadn't realized he'd been missing for so long. Christine, standing by the counter with a gentle smile, felt her chest swell with pride and love. Her heart raced softly, a quiet rhythm of satisfaction and relief. The boys were safe, happy, and thriving, and Tom, once the lonely prince trapped in a golden cage, now radiated a sense of belonging. Carl, seated at the small wooden table, watched the scene unfold with eyes glistening and chest tightening with emotion. He reached out tentatively and took Christine's hand, squeezing it gently. His lips curved into a small, sincere smile, and for the first time in years, he felt the profound comfort of a home built not of wealth or appearance, but of love and shared care. "You were right," Carl said softly, voice thick with emotion. This, this is what a family looks like. Not the mansion, not appearances, this is home." Tom leaned against Christine, eyes shining with happiness and relief. His chest rose and fell evenly now, no longer constricted by fear or tension. "See, Dad, I told you, this is what home feels like," he murmured, voice small but confident, full of heartfelt certainty. Ethan and Caleb grinned, exchanging playful glances. "Tom's the fastest eater in the house now," Ethan teased, nudging his brother lightly. Tom laughed, the sound full and free, a melody that filled every corner of the room with pure joy. Christine's eyes filled with tears, but her smile remained steady. Her chest ached, a mixture of joy, relief, and love, as she watched the boys' laughter and Tom's radiant smile. "You've all grown so much," she whispered softly, almost to herself. "And yet the best is still ahead." Carl, still holding her hand, nodded. "We have a chance to start over," he said, voice steady but filled with emotion. "To really be a family, together, with honesty, with love, with respect. And I won't waste it this time." Tom's heart fluttered, a warm, steady rhythm, as he realized the truth of those words. The golden cage was gone. The fear, the manipulation, the loneliness, they had all been replaced by something stronger: connection, love, and the sense of being truly seen. The family gathered around the small table, sharing food, laughter, and stories. Each smile, each glance, each word of encouragement wove invisible threads that bound them together. The mansion remained in the background, an artifact of a life that no longer defined them. Their home, their real home, was here in the warmth of shared moments, in the simple acts of care, in the strength of bonds forged by truth and courage. Tom looked around, chest swelling with gratitude, heart full, eyes shining. "Thank you," he whispered softly, voice almost lost in the hum of the house. "For everything, for standing by me." Christine squeezed his hand gently. "Always, Tommy. Always." Carl reached across, placing a hand on Tom's shoulder, firm and reassuring. "I see you now, son," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I hear you, and I promise nothing will come between us again." The room seemed to glow, not with wealth or grandeur, but with love, laughter, and the quiet, steady heartbeat of a family finally whole. Tom, Christine, Carl, Ethan, and Caleb, their lives intertwined, hearts aligned, and spirits renewed. As the morning light filtered through the curtains, casting warm patterns across the worn wooden floor, Tom felt a deep, unshakable sense of belonging. He knew now that a true home wasn't built with gold or jewels. It was built with hearts, courage, and unwavering love. And in that light, he realized something even greater. Love has the power to break walls, heal wounds, and transform lives. Even in the darkest times, even in the coldest mansions, truth and love could always find a way. The Winters had found their beginning, not in wealth, not in grandeur, but in the quiet strength of family, the courage to stand for what was right, and the love that endured through every trial. And for those of you watching this story unfold, remember, courage can change everything, and love is always worth fighting for. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to follow our channel for more inspiring tales of hope, resilience, and transformation.